Welcome in, everyone. It's Tuesday, so that means it's time for It's Official, our weekly podcast. Banner, 5 hot topics. He's Jeff Siegel. I'm Jeremy Plonk from First Bet and Express Bet. For those of you who are watching inside the friendly confines of the first Pegasus World Cup wager guide, welcome in. We hope you're enjoying all the content around Pegasus World Cup. It is Pegasus Week. Jeff Siegel down at Gulfstream Park. The dignitaries and top horses are going to gather for the $3 million main event, part of 3 big races, and I got a feeling they're going to have a heavy influence on our topics this week.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a great day of racing at Gulfstream Park. We got the $3 million race. Sometimes you get an overwhelming favorite, and it's a good race to watch and all that. It's not really that great of a race because it's not a good gambling race. This race really is. I mean, it's sort of wide open. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we have a big long shot. So dive in that one, and several other major stakes races that are challenging as well. I'm really looking forward to Saturday at Gulfstream Park.
I'll tell you what, the Jockey's Room is as good as any day, not a Breeders' Cup day, and as good as many Breeders' Cup days. When you talk about Frankie Dettori, Ocean Murphy, David Egan, the international intrigue, the top American pilots that are involved, it is going to be something else down at Gulfstream Park on Saturday. Let's talk about the Pegasus World Cup as our first of 5 topics, and Jeff, pace makes the race is the old axiom in handicapping, but it might really be true in the Pegasus World Cup, where this field of 12, with one also eligible in Castle Chaos, has very interesting early pace dynamics about it. Hoist the Gold, National Treasure, 2 of the horses to really consider, and certainly the 2 to watch early on.
This race within a race really is going to impact the result one way or the other. You've got Hoist the Gold, who's coming out of a very fast mile race from the career top 109 win figure when winning the Cigar Mile on the lead. Then you've got National Treasure, who has never won a race in which he didn't make the lead.
Right.
And these 2 horses have only one chance to win, and that is to beat the other one to the clubhouse turn. Because I don't think Hoist the Gold is going to be sitting second, going a mile and 1/8 and taking his best weapon away, which is his speed. And National Treasure never has won a race in which he didn't make the lead. So who's quicker than who? Who is going to be committed to going to the front? And if they hook up, who among the closers have the best chance, or the stalkers have the best chance of producing the last run? These are questions that, I mean, I'm not really sure where to go on this, Jeremy. I'm not sure how this is going to shape up. Usually when I'm gambling on a race and I have a reasonably good, decent opinion, I kind of envision what the race shape's going to be, the race flow. Here, I'm not so sure.
Now, we don't have a crystal ball, but what we do have is the benefit of race replays, right? We're trying to figure out who's going to make that hop out of the gate, who's going to show intent. And I know you want to take a look at the last start for both of the 2 major pace players in here. National Treasure from the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, when he had an outside post position with a short run into the first turn at Santa Anita that day. And then Hoist the Gold, who had an outside post position, but with a long run into the turn in the Cigar Mile. Let's take a look at both of those races. And as we go to the start of the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, National Treasure is going to be the 9 horse to the outside of the starting gate here, and we've got him picked out for you. Jeff, take us through this.
Well, he's being whipped and driven. I mean, he's running, looking like he's a quarter horse here, and the intent was to get over to make the running into the clubhouse turn. He was absolutely able to do that. Flavien Prat just gunned him to the lead because Bob Baffert couldn't read a racing for him. He knows the horse, and he had to go to the front. On the other hand, Hoist the Gold, who's got plenty of speed, he wasn't sent at all. Now, this might be designed to the fact that there was a long run to that clubhouse turn. He didn't really have to send him. And but Hoist the Gold ran very well in this race without being shoved and pushed on the early stages. He still went fast, 22.2, 44.4, but he's kind of under cruise control. He had the luxury of doing that. Now, I don't think he's going to have the luxury of doing that in this race because the outside horse, I think, is going to be committed to go. And I think, Johnny V is going to have to get into him to make sure that he doesn't get crossed over on. And you tell me, because you know him maybe better than I do, Johnny can do that. He's pretty good, pretty adept with getting his horses to make sure that they are where they need to be. So, again, who's going to be committed? Who's going to blink going into the first turn when they go head and head? Who's going to take back? Who's going to go and continue to go? I don't know. And do you have any insight on that? Because this race could be determined in the first eighth of a mile.
I agree, and it might have been determined at the post position draw because Skippy Longstocking, one of the other front running types, drew the 12. They've got to go from out there, right? They've got to hustle a little bit more. But Hoist the Gold in the 4, National Treasure in the 7, and Skippy Longstocking in the 12. With that speed outside, the 4 hole is going to be the perfect spot for John Velasquez on Hoist the Gold, because if you watch Johnny V over the years, one of his favorite moves is when he has the inside speed is to come out into the 3 or 4 path into the clubhouse turn, take everybody out with him a few paths, and then cut the corner. And then he's 2.5 in front with horses running the same speed because he just plays the geometry like a wizard going into the clubhouse turn like that. With no speed to his inside, really, Nimitz classed, couple deep closers inside of him. He can go wherever he wants into that clubhouse turn and not worry about the inside ground and to the inside of him. And Hoist the Gold is probably going to be 3-4 paths wide, trying to take Baffert's horse out, trying to take Safi's horse out into the clubhouse turn, and then cut that corner and maybe 2.5 in front midway on the clubhouse turn. That's what he wants to do in there, Jeff. And I know you like Hoist the Gold a bit in this race as far as our Pegasus World Cup wager guide and some of our picks that we have in there. All the handicappers across the first family of tracks have given their picks for the Pegasus World Cup and the main event race. And I think you know that Hoist the Gold's going to be dangerous in here if he can cut that corner and get the lead onto the backstretch.
Well, he's 12-1 in the morning line, so it's a gamble. I am not sure whether Hoist the Gold wants to run 2 turns. He had one prior chance doing it at the fairgrounds in the Mine Shaft last year, named after his sire, by the way, Mine Shaft. And he made the lead and just got run over. On the other hand, in watching his Cigar Mile win, in which he went very fast, earned that giant number, he won by 4.5 lengths, but he wasn't spent at the wire. In fact, he galloped out way in front. I thought maybe he'd be pulled up by the clubhouse turn, but he was just way in front, farther in front, galloping out than he was, at the wire. And pedigree-wise, he should go 1.1 1/8, I would think, and maybe he's just better now than he was about a year ago. So I could see doing. And look, Johnny, he knows the horse. He's ridden him all these times. He's not taking back. He can't possibly take back. The question is, if National Treasure and Pratt, if they see they can't get over and they have to stalk and take back, does that allow Hoist the Gold the breather he needs to keep on going? And can National Treasure show a new dimension, which is to stay stalk and win, because he's never done that. So from a gambling standpoint, if I take 12-1 or whatever I can get on Hoist the Gold, I'll know in the first 22 seconds or so whether I've got any kind of look at all. And if I do, great, it's a good gamble. The other horse I wanted to mention is, you mentioned if these 2 horses hook up, there's a possibility that a stalker could possibly win this. Obviously, someone will pick up the pieces if they commit suicide up front. Who's your best stalker or your best closer?
I think First Mission's the best stalker. I think he sits 4th in this race. I think Safi's horse on the outside, Skippy Longstocking, is going to have to go. That forces 3 of them up into the mix. And First Mission wants to be pretty forward in this race, but I don't think he's going to be 1-2. And sitting 4th just might be a beautiful trip down the backstretch. He's got very good brisk late pace figures for a horse who stays that close to the pace. And if he can outpunch the others in the stretch, it could be a victory for the Brad Cox trainee. Of course, Cox had the favorite last year, Cyberknife, who's kind of a lukewarm, loose favorite in this race last year. This horse comes in, I think, with a little bit better credentials in terms of matching up with this particular field. And I think that he's got a shot with First Mission. Senior Buscador is the deep closer. He's got really good late brisk pace figures, but he's going to be coming from the parking lot. And we don't see horses win races at Gulfstream very often, 2-turn routing from the parking lot. So Senior Buscador underneath is a possibility. I know our buddy Eddie Olczek's got an upset pick from off the pace, so you're going to have to check out that wager guide, the first Pegasus World Cup wager guide. Go to first.com/guide or check it out on the links on any of the First or ExpressBet platforms to get that wager guide. Eddie's got an upset pick in the Classic as well. Now, if you want to take Jeff on this weekend, I want to remind you that he's the host in our ExpressBet Beat the Host contest coming up this Saturday. The 19th annual ExpressBet Beat the Host marches on through 3 weeks. I think there's only about 20 players left who can sweep the host all 8 weeks. This will be week number 4 of the contest. Jeff will have his picks on the website at post time for each race. The final 5 races on the card at Gulfstream on Saturday, the first 5 races on the card at Santa Anita on Saturday. So be sure to play that free handicapping contest. You're basically making 10 $5 wagers. It costs you $50 to play the contest in the win pool. It's pari-mutuel, so try to rack up your total and beat Jeff Siegel for your share of $60,000 in seasonal prizes and cash. It's the ExpressBet Beat the Host contest. Be sure to check that out this weekend. Jeff Siegel, you better warm up. I think you're going to be in the gym with the sweatband on and training all week for that one.
I will be. And the good news is I've already got all the PPs for Gulfstream Park.
Yep.
I can get a head start on that. I'm going to be doing heavy work for Santa Anita because I'll be hosting the simulcast show for Saturday and Sunday. So I will definitely be prepared for that. So no excuses. I mean, if I pick 10 losers or so, then it's not because I didn't do the work. By the way, I've done that before, so that's within the realm of possibility. You never know. It's like, I mean, I might have a good day, I might not. I don't know. I'm shake me on. You've got a pretty decent chance of beating me, at least based on prior years anyway.
All right, let's get it this week, Siegel. Put him down and make him pay this week and beat the host.
All right.
We go to our second topic this week on It's Official. It's the Pegasus World Cup Turf, and we're looking at a horse who's unbeaten, unproven, and untested to this point. 3 for 3. The name is Integration.
Laurel Valley has kicked. Equitize is now sprinting for home. So is Integration, and Integration is trying to fend off an I'm Very Busy who's trying to move towards the outside, but Integration is just sprinting clear. Look at this run, is drifting well out, but Integration is now opening up on this field, is well out into the turf course, but no doubt about your winner. Integration, much the best here at 4 to 5 in the Hill Prince.
You don't draw off like that too often on the turf. We'll look at another one a little bit later that drew off even more, but these are exceptional performances when you win by daylight in grass races like that. How good is this horse Integration heading into the Pegasus World Cup Turf?
Well, you don't, as you mentioned, you don't win off on the grass usually by many lengths. It's, you can win by 2. It's like 4 or 5 on the dirt, but when you win by 5, like this Cole did, it's almost like winning by 10 on the dirt. He was a $700,000 Saratoga yearling purchase, so he's always been highly regarded. He's obviously a great-looking colt. He was late to the party, didn't start until August 12th of his 3-year-old season. And Shug wouldn't be doing this unless he thought he was up to the task. I think he is. Freshened since November, training well, bullet work at Payson Park just a week ago. Lovely inside draw with great tactical speed. I think he'll be able to adapt to any kind of pace flow. It's just a matter of now stepping up and improving enough to beat the older horses. Based on his buyer numbers, which continue to rise with every start, lightly raced, newly turned 4-year-old, I'm expecting to see him run the race of his life. Okay, I really is. I do believe that it's going to be good enough to beat the field, with maybe the exception of Warm Heart, because she's got the resume that most of these horses would kill for. But in the absence of that, I think Integration likely is the one to beat.
This is supposed to be a feel-good story. A 3 for 3 horse, a 3-year-old taking on elders for the first time and getting out of the 3-year-old ranks, now age 4, stepping up. He's done everything. This is his proving ground. We get a battle of the sexes with the filly Warm Heart taking on the boys. But it just never turns out that way, right? Feel-good stories aren't for horse racing. No. Sometimes we're talking about the jockey situation with Integration this week that caused some consternation. So folks online, obviously, and the rider himself, Kendrick Carmouche, wondering, what the heck did I do wrong? Hall of Fame trainer Shug McGahee pulls the plug on Kendrick Carmouche, who's ridden this horse to victories in those recent stakes races, and goes back to Tyler Gaffalione, the Virginia Derby and the Hill Prince, ridden by Kendrick Carmouche. Tyler Gaffalione rode in the debut, and now Shug goes back to Tyler Gaffalione in this particular spot because of experience over the turf course at Gulfstream Park. What say you, Jeff Siegel?
Well, yeah, this is a situation where Kendrick thinks he deserves the mount because he rode him in his last 2. Gaffalione, however, did ride him in his debut. Now, when I had a lot of top-class horses with Team Valor and we were deciding who to ride, I would always tell the agent this. I said, look, we want you to ride this horse, but because you rode him, or we want you to. But if you can find a better horse, if you really think you can find a better horse,
Right.
than ours, then by all means ride them. I mean, loyalty is one thing, but you got to do what's best for you. So if you think you've got a better horse, we're not going to get mad at you or anything like that. We're going to understand that you have a choice to make and ride the better horse that you think. On the other hand, if we can find a better rider, we're going to ride that guy too. So, we're both on the same plane here, Take the best horse that you have. If it's our horse, great. But we're going to do the same thing. If I can get, I know in the old days, if I had Pink Eye or Shoemaker in the room and we could get him, we're going to get him. Okay,
right.
Especially since that they started out, and there was kind of more a series of circumstances that landed Kendrick on this horse anyway. I mean, he was at Colonial, so he rode him. He was in New York in November. He rode him there. So I understand that. But hey, for $3 million, or whatever this race is, this is actually $1 million race, not three, the dirt races. You got to do what's best for you, for your horse, and for your owners, and what you think is best. And I know Karma is one thing. Maybe Kendrick thinks Karma will get Integration beat. I don't think Gaffleone will. So I'm with Suge on this one, but that's just me.
Yeah, and look, a lot of the same people that are crying the blues for Kendrick Carmouche were the same ones lauding Javier Castellano throughout 2023 on social media and how he got hosed for the Eclipse Award. Let's not forget, Javier Castellano going to the Kentucky Derby was supposed to be riding Race Kane.
Right.
But those owners wouldn't let him wear the Jeff Ruby pants in the Kentucky Derby, so he said Cyrenard to them, spun them, got on Mage, won the Kentucky Derby. Then when it came time to the Belmont Stakes, he won it with Arcangelo. And when Mage and Arcangelo were supposed to go against each other, he said, I'm not riding the Derby winner. I'm going with the horse who I think is best. Jockeys ride who they think are best. Trainers ride who they think will be best. There is a two-way street to this. Spinning trainers and spinning jockeys is a turnstile in this game, Jeff. It happens both directions. I can't fault it. And again, when Suge makes the comment, and I'm a bit of a Suge homer, we go back 20 years plus.
Sure.
But when he says, look, Kendrick hasn't ridden this meet. It's a brand new turf course. Gaffleone has ridden over this new turf course in $1 million race. I want to go with that experience. That's justification enough for me. I'm fine with that answer right there because it is a new turf course. If you're at Aqueduct and you're going to fly somebody else in to ride over Carmouche, now we might have ourselves a talk, right? I mean, if this race is at Aqueduct on the main or on their turf course back again, then you can have that conversation on whether or not you're yanking the rider for, just going for a bigger name. But in this case, hometown track for Gaffleone. He's ridden there all season long. I don't have a problem with it at all. I think they give themselves the best chance to win. And again, just go back to the Javier Castellano saga
I guess
this year. And it all worked out great for Castellano. I mean, it worked out great, but it didn't work out good for Race Kane's owners in the Kentucky Derby. And it didn't work out well for Mage in the Travers Stakes, right? I mean, somebody wins and somebody loses when we make these changes. So it goes both ways.
It does. It'll be interesting to see how the race shapes up. But Integration, the funny thing about him is he's kind of an easy horse to ride because he just kind of falls into the right spot and then you push a button and you go. So I'm not sure the jock's going to win or lose this race. But what he may lose it if Warm Heart shows up. But what do you think of her now? I mean, she ran unbelievably well in the Breeders' Cup Filly Mare Turf. When she missed by an actor in Spiral, who came out of the clouds and nailed her. And before that, she was a multiple Group 1 winner. She won the Yorkshire Oaks and top class company. She won at Royal Ascot and the Rillsdale. Maybe the concern I have are twofold here with Jeremy. Here, number one, a mile and eighth is more like a sprint for her. She's more of a mile and a half type mare, and I don't know whether she's going to be caught for speed in this race because there's some fillies in here or some horses in here that can quicken like Integration. And the other thing is, I watched her race in the Hong Kong Vase, and she was very, very well backed in that race. And I checked her time form numbers in that race compared to her previous numbers to see if she was beaten by 3 lengths. Did she run below her form, or did she just come out of a tougher race? Turns out Warm Heart really did run well below her best that day and really kind of waved the white flag under pressure in the final furlong and got beat after leading the way in the upper stretch. And now this is her last race of her career. I mean, she's had 10 races now since the last year, and I just don't know whether the last race of the year and the shortening and trip and the firm ground and all that, I just don't know whether I can expect her to show up with her A game. And that would be my gamble against her, knowing full well that if she does show up with her A game, she's more likely going to win. But, this is gambling. You got to take a stand somewhere.
Yeah, like with these Aidan O'Brien trainees and these Euros, when we get to Breeders' Cup, we're often saying it's the end of their season in Europe, right? We're already extending them farther than they really on the calendar we're typically used to doing, for decades in Europe. Now you went from the California Breeders' Cup back to Ireland to Hong Kong, back to Ireland, now to Florida. That's a lot going on since the season was supposed to be over for the Europeans. That's a lot since November to now, when they're used to being laid up for the winter. So, it is a lot to ask of her. But on her best, she was awfully good. Let's go back and watch Integrations win, or not Integrations win, but the Filly and Mare Turf runner-up when she got beat by Inspiral. But it was a big-time effort that day from Warm Heart.
Laurel Valley has kicked. Equitize is now sprinting for home. So is Integration, and Integration is trying to fend off an I'm Very Busy who's trying.
Stayed Occasion edging up alongside in second. Warm Heart waiting for a place to go. Meanwhile, Moira swings up on the outside. Fev Rover is right there in contention. Nothing yet from Inspiral. She's going to weave to the outside. She still has 6 lengths to gain. In Italian to catch. Warm Heart ranges up alongside of her and goes on by. Here comes Inspiral and Moira. Here comes Inspiral after Warm Heart. Inspiral! And Frankie Dettori timed it right. Warm Heart was next. Moira and Win Maryland.
That was the Filly and Mare Turf on Breeders' Cup Day. The Filly and Mare Turf is our next topic on Pegasus World Cup Day. It'll be race number 10 of 13 on the card. Do we have ourselves a superstar or a one-hit wonder? We are talking about a filly who came to the U.S. in the Cardinal Handicap at Churchill for the first time, named Star Fortress. She kind of came in unknown, and she left with quite a reputation. Let's go back and take a look.
And Star Fortress switches to the far outside. They're off the turn. Walkathon cut the corner. Saffron Moon traveling well. These two head and head for the lead. Star Fortress is rocketing down the top of the turf. And here comes Star Fortress from last to first in the blink of an eye. Star Fortress just like that. In front by 7. Oh, she's running away from them. Star Fortress like a rocket down the turf today.
All right, you were there, Travis Stone. But I'll tell you, will she repeat that effort, Jeff? This is a big question mark for me as we get to the Filly and Mare Turf on Pegasus World Cup Day. That race was in November. She's had 3 workouts since November. That seems like a very light campaign. I can't imagine, though, they train up to $1 million race with a short horse. So Cherie DeVaux's got to have a plan here. It just seems really light and spread out on the workout tab. Maybe this is a horse that doesn't take to a lot of work.
Well, she's from Europe, and, she fired such a big shot in November in that race that we just saw. She hadn't been out since July. So she was like 3 months off. So she clearly can run well fresh. And I'm pretty sure that she doesn't need a lot of work. I mean, most of her breezes probably were galloping out and galloping, and they train them European. And I'm not really worried too much about that. What I am worried about, though, is the shortening from 1 1/8 to 1 1/16 over a fast track, fast turf course. I assume it'll be pretty firm with a short run in from the top of the stretch to the wire. And I looked at her European races because I really wanted to see where that incredible effort came from. She had earned a 104 Beyer number. And I couldn't find a race that was even remotely close to that. I mean, her time form ratings in Europe, and she'd run 7 times. She had a 100 time form rating. What is that? Well, I mean, it's like comparing apples to oranges. But I can tell you the 104 Beyer number would equate to somewhere around a 120. So she ran so much better in that race than she had ever done before. I don't know if she's a one-hit wonder or not, because if she's not, then she's the best turf filly and mare in the country. Let's put it that way. But if she is, and the conditions of this turf course are such that don't favor her late running style, then maybe she'll be vulnerable. This is another one of these races where we talked about this in the classic, the first race. I mean, there are variables in here that you really can't account for. I mean, you have to either gamble and try to be right and if you're not, you're not going to win, or just try to guess right. I don't know. I think she's terrific, but I also think that given these conditions, I'm not sure that we can expect anything close to what we just saw. And if that's the case, then maybe she's vulnerable, and maybe she won't beat a horse that I like, that the one that I'm going to gamble on, and that's Ruby Nell, who I know in my own backyard here at Santa Anita, and I know her well. I've seen her ever since she was here, ever since she started training, and she breezed in 58 and change the other day, and I have never in my life seen Ruby Nell this good. This is the end of a 58 and change work over a deep track, a dead track. Now, let me just say this about Ruby Nell. They gave $1.2 million for her, so this is not unexpected that she's this good. But she's the kind of filly who can win on dirt. She can win on turf. She can go to the front and just wire the field. She can come from off the pace, and she has never been better. And the form really has held up, Jeremy. Just won a race, won a little stake race that she completely outclassed the field. She was 20 cents on the dollar. But earlier than that, she won the Autumn Miss, and she destroyed Anisette. You know, so, I mean, I don't know what more she can do other than the fact that she hits this field in such a manner that, I mean, 8-1, I don't know what price she's going to be, but if someone could get me 8-1 right now, I might just make a stop at the bank. That's all I can tell you. Because I don't think she'll be 8-1, but I mean, if she is, man, I'm diving in head first. I can tell you that.
You've got Didier in here, who had the win streak snapped last time out in the Philly and Mare Turf. Didn't run well that day, but she's a come from behind her for sure. Fluffy Socks comes from well off the pace. You talked about the favorite with that one big run that she made, Star Fortress, in her one U.S. start. If she repeats that form, you figure she's a big closer in here. So if you're going to beat the favorites in this race, it seems like a horse near the front would be the right way to do it. So with Ruby Nell, you've got potential speed in there. Queen Goddess is interesting to me in here. She's the defending champion in the race for Mike McCarthy. Michael McCarthy. She's based out in Southern California. Her form hasn't been as good this year as it was last year, but she got a really good first over trip just from a little bit off the pace last year. Ruby Nell goes out to the front. You might see Queen Goddess get that first run at her, whereas Didia and Fluffy Socks and Star Goddess are going to be coming from, farther. Star Fortress is going to be coming from further off the pace. So she might get that first run and get the trip back. I liked her last work. We've got all these works for you. There's a special Pegasus World Cup section at xbtv.com you want to check out. We showed you Ruby Nell's work. I really liked the work of Queen Goddess last time. I thought she worked really exceptional on her own in company. She looked good. And so if she's back on form and working back up towards this, $500,000 race, she could be a factor in here as a potential repeat champion.
1 for 1 over the course and earned 100 by her number in the win. I mean, that's probably going to be close to being good enough. And I kind of thought she was tailing off towards Del Mar, but she's had a couple of months now, and she could bounce back. And again, from a pace projection position, she's going to get the same kind of trip I think she got last year. So now it's just a matter of whether she's as good now at age 5 as she was last year. But again, lots of variables here, lots of question marks, and it's really going to be interesting to see Star Fortress, because she comes out of a race and when they went 48-3, 113-4. And this race, they're going to go, even if they don't send, they're going to go 3/4 and 10, mile and 33. It's a whole different type of race. If Star Fortress can adjust and do in this race what she did at Churchill over good ground, man, I tip my hat to her. And if she beats me, she beats me. But, man, I'm telling you, we're going to find out a lot about Star Fortress in this race.
That'll be race number 10 on the card, the first of the Pegasus races, the Philly and Mare Turf. Then the 11th will be the Hooper, I believe. Then the 12th and 13th will be the Pegasus World Cup Turf and Pegasus World Cup. So final 4 on the card, an all-stakes pick 4. There's an all-stakes pick 5 as well. More than $20,000 in hit and splits when you play the pick 4s and pick 5s this weekend at Gulfstream Park on Saturday with Express Bet and First Bet. So not only do you hit your pari-mutuel winnings, but there's $4,000 or $5,000 added to the potential payouts in all those multi-race wagers when you play with First Bet and Express Bet, just shared with other players on the platform who also win. So when you bet the pick 4s and pick 5s on Pegasus World Cup Day, be sure to do it with First Bet and Express Bet. That's our wrap of the Pegasus portion of this program. For those of you watching in the wager guide, get handicapping, but stick around because we still have 2 more topics for you this week on the show. And we are talking about Bob Baffert tossing in the towel. What do we mean by that? Yesterday, it was announced on the platform X by Bob Baffert himself that he is dropping his lawsuit against Churchill Downs Incorporated, the appeal of the suspension of Medina Spirit from the 2021 Kentucky Derby. It's been tied up in court proceedings for over 2 years now. Bob Baffert currently suspended from running horses at Churchill Downs Incorporated Properties all the way through the end of 2024, Jeff. And it doesn't seem like, despite this statement and despite this admonition from Bob Baffert of dropping the lawsuit, that Churchill Downs isn't changing their mind anytime soon.
No, they are not. Maybe they would have if Bob had done this 2 years ago. I honestly believe he got bad advice. I think that given the facts that I was able to grasp, right out the initial part of the lawsuit, I said to myself, because I had a reason for saying this, because his Medina Spirit was disqualified for having an illegal drug in his system, and Bob was claiming that it was contaminated or something like that and was accidental, and that's not the point. It never was the point. We lost a big person with a horse named Lady Blessington back in the big 90s, scopolamine, and they proved that it was contaminated. We had nothing to do with it. Richard Mandela had nothing to do with it. It's just one of those things, and we lost a purse of a great stake. So, I mean, the precedent was set that it doesn't matter how it got there. As long as it got there, then you get disqualified. And common sense would have told me, don't mess with this. You're not going to win it. Yeah. You're just not going to win. And it's Churchill Downs. It's like you can't take them on, and then the ramifications are going to be pretty bad if you do and you lose. And this is what happens. So now he can't run the Derby. They're not backing down. They could ban him for life. It's their race. It's their track. I don't think they will. I think they'll probably let him back in a year, or maybe even next year, but not this year. And he did it this week, maybe hoping that maybe they would, drop the ban and he could get his 3-year-olds in this year. And Churchill says, nope. It's nice what you said. We're glad you're not suing us anymore, but the ban still holds. So who knows the backstory? All I know is that from my standpoint, it's too little too late. From Bob's standpoint, he'll get back in the Derby run eventually, but not this year.
Right. And the timing of this, as you were alluding to, Baffert's trying to get his horses eligible for the 2024 Kentucky Derby in his name, because the decree put out by Churchill Downs in the last 7-10 days were that any horses trained by a suspended trainer have to move to a non-suspended trainer by January 29th, which I believe is the day where the Triple Crown nominees are submitted. Yes. So the deadline for Triple Crown nominees. So it's not some random day just picked out of the blue, but it is high time. As you mentioned, the 29th, I think, is Monday, right? I mean, we are not looking very far off until all the horses that under Baffert's care that could be potential Kentucky Derby starters this year will have to move. So this could have been an 11th, and it looks like an 11th hour move on his part to do a mea culpa, to say, I'm sorry, I should have never challenged this. We thank Churchill Downs. We look forward to working with Heisen and everything that they can do. And then hopefully you got some leniency, and they would say, okay, we're not going to ban your horses this year. It didn't work out that way, because it was like an hour later where Churchill Downs issued their statement saying this has no impact on what our decision is for 2024. So there will be no Bob Baffert horses as we see it right now in this year's Kentucky Derby. He's got the next 6 days as we record our podcast, 6 days out from the 29th, in order to see which one of his 3-year-olds this year will move to another barn. Some owners seem to be pretty bullish on staying with him with some top young contenders. Others are saying, we'll have to see what happens, and they're trying to wait it out and see. But they've only got 6 more days to wait until they have to make a decision, Jeff. We talked about it on our podcast last week when this started becoming news. So folks want to kind of get our opinion on the, who may move, what horses we're looking at. Be sure to check out the archives of last week's podcast. It's official. We talked about that in more depth. But 11th hour move by Baffert, last ditch. It did not seem to work. It was a Hail Mary that fell incomplete.
Yeah, and not surprising. So the funny thing is that he's got Nisus, who's continuing to train terrific, and it would be a shame if he were to do what I think he's going to do in California, and that is remain unbeaten through the Santa Anita Derby for how many races he wants to run, and not get a chance to run in the Kentucky Derby, although it would make the Preakness pretty interesting. I'll give you that. On the other hand, it's up to the owners. I mean, do they want to miss out on maybe a once in a lifetime real legitimate chance to win the Derby, or what? And then we've got another one that we saw last few days ago over the weekend, that maybe better than any of them. I don't know. So
Right.
it's like every week we come up with a new Baffert that may or may not be in the Derby and maybe deserves to be in it. It's like there's a never-ending string of these that look sensational, breaking their maiden.
The lack of Derby presence and no barn changes that we'll find out in the next week or so could be big news for tracks like Oaklawn or Maidan, because you look at the UAE Derby and that Oaklawn series where the Rebels over $1 million, the Arkansas Derby is like $1.5 million now.
Right.
If you can't run in the Kentucky Derby, you're going to run for the money, and those races also give you a lot of spacing and time to come back and be Preakness and Belmont Stakes type.
Absolutely.
And this year's Belmont at a mile a quarter, right, at Saratoga is more of a Baffert race than the 1.5 mile Belmont typically, like, because Baffert horses typically train for speed and they don't run in the Belmont unless there's a Triple Crown on the line typically. So you would think the Belmont Stakes is going to be a lot more appealing to his barn too this year, being at a 1.25 mile at Saratoga. So those races could be big benefiters right there. The Preakness, the Belmont, obviously, but also beforehand on the trail, Oaklawn and Maidan could be looking at some Baffert influence. We'll see how it shakes out here over the next couple weeks. You had mentioned that Bob Baffert's got yet another star that he unleashed in the past couple days. Our Stars of Tomorrow is always our fifth and final segment here, no matter the time of the year. But when they unleash a maiden this time of the year, you sure get excited. You start to think Justify, Mage, horses in recent years who came on late onto the scene and made their presence felt in winning the Kentucky Derby. Could May Moon be the next one? He was very impressive in the first race on the card this past weekend.
Second, then it's McVeigh in third, followed by Tessuto. They turn for home, and May Moon is in charge. Moving into second is McVeigh now, followed by All That Glory, but it's lights out for May Moon in a sparkling debut. It's a rainy day, but here's a ray of sunshine. May Moon romping home at first asking, wins by 7 easy lengths.
How good can he be? We're not sure. This is a son of Frosted, Jeff, who only sold for $50,000 as a yearling. Then he was pinhooked for what, $950, something like that, as a 2-year-old in April of last year. But then you don't see him from April until all the way till January. Usually horses pinhooked and sold for $950 in a 2-year-old sale are back at Del Mar in the summer, right? We're expecting those horses to kind of pay back right away. It was a long time for May Moon to get to the races. The patience paid off, obviously. Same colors, same connections as we're talking about with Medina Spirit. What will they do over the next couple days and over the next couple months?
I don't think this colt's going anywhere, Derby or not, Although maybe, who knows? Here's the thing about this. He's by Frosted, so he should run long. Mm-hmm. He brought $900,000 in the sale, and he's saying, who in the world would give $900,000 for Frosted, or a colt by Frosted, who stands for $10,000? So I went back and watched the breeze. He went 9-3. I don't think I have ever seen a faster breeze in Ocala than 9-3. And trust me, Jeremy, he was breezing. He was really breezing. He never let him run. He could have gone. I don't even know how fast he could have gone. So I understand why they gave $900,000 for him. I've never seen a breeze that good that was that fast. Now, in terms of bringing him back and giving him plenty of time, obviously that was probably not by design. But when you breeze in 9-3, you probably have to make sure that all the parts are still fitting. After you do that. He was actually training last summer at Los Alamitos, just kind of hacking around. And so it took him a while to finally get into the races. But the one thing that we didn't see in that videotape is I watched him train in the morning, and we had his works on XBTV. Really, he was really actually green in the morning. I mean, he was doing all kinds of stupid things. He was lugging in, and I mean, he was fast, but he wasn't doing it the right way. So I was worried that maybe he would make a mistake in his first start, which is one of the reasons why he didn't go off with quite as short a price as he was going to be. He was like almost even money, and these kind of horses would be like 2 to 5 for Baffert, because people like me were afraid that he might jump over the fence or something. Anyway, coming out of the gate, he makes a left-hand turn, crashes into another horse, does all this. The first thing you think about is like, okay, I'm glad I didn't bet this horse, because I knew this was going to happen. All of a sudden, he put his head down, takes off, switches off midway, then gets tripped to at the quarter pole, opens up, and then they take a hold of him again. I mean, he could have won this race. He won by 7.5. He could have won by all rights. He was 15 lengths the best. And he ran fast, 94 Buyer number first time out, not even trying. So that's what $900,000 gets you if you want to buy a horse that breezes in 9-3 like he did. Now, if he'd been by Hidden Mischief or somebody else, he probably would have bought $3 million,
Sure.
So anyway, I am so intrigued by this Colt Maymoon. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know what I would do if I owned him. On the one hand, it's not too late to win a Derby this time of the year. Justified did it. On the other hand, you take him away from Baffert, I don't know. So I'm looking forward to the next 6 days. I want to know what's going to happen with these colts because there's so many of them, Nysos being one of them, to see where they end up in 6 days.
Well, I wasn't not paying attention to you and checking out my messages. I was actually making a quick search because it dawned on me while we were talking about him could he come back quick enough for the Saudi Derby, a $1.5 million race? And the date is February 24th for that race. So he's got a dead set month in between races. Amir Zadan, the owner here of Medina Spirit, and of course of this horse that we're talking about, Maymoon, running in the Saudi Derby might be of a lot of interest to the connections and a big money race. So like I said, if they want to say, let's get our money now and then worry about Triple Crown races some other time, like, Belmont or, and get to be a 1.25 mile horse by the Preakness or the Belmont, maybe that, a race like that would be in the wheelhouse there.
Well, it's a one-turn race, right?
Right.
It's a one-turn race.
Mile. Yeah.
So he wouldn't, maybe he's not ready to go 1 1/8 miles, but even if he's not, who would beat him over there for that kind of money? And besides, this is a guy who wants to win there. I mean, he wants to win the races at Saudi Arabia. So
it's a flat mile.
I hadn't even thought about that. So, yeah. I really hadn't thought about that, but he might say, forget the Derby. Who cares? Let's win this one. Maybe go to Maidan, win that, or maybe bring him back and point for the Preakness and then the Belmont. We'll be champion 3-year-old anyway if we win those two. Who cares about the Derby? So you may not be onto something. I mean, that's not as far-fetched as I originally thought. I mean, to make that jump, but because I don't know who's going over there, and I sure as heck don't know who's already pointing for a race like that. But I wouldn't suspect anybody would beat Maymoon if he went up when it showed up there, even if he's not mentally all ready yet.
An intriguing weekend of prospects. We saw the Lecomte Stakes where it was Track Phantom and Nash running 1-2, just like they did in the Gun Runner. On the undercard, the Steve Asmussen Trainee Hall of Fame ran off the screen in a maiden race. He's headed towards the Risen Star now. So a lot of fun on the trail, and maybe a horse who threw his name onto the trail, Maymoon, off of that big debut victory there at Santa Anita. That's a wrap of our 5 topics this week on It's Official. We took you to the Pegasus World Cup and talked about the pace and showed you the early strategy and how it could play out between John Velazquez and the Flavian Pratt aboard 2 of the major players in the early part of the pace for the Pegasus World Cup. We talked about the unbeaten and unproven and untested potential American favorite, Integration, in the Pegasus World Cup turf, but he'll take on the filly Warm Heart from overseas. Is it a superstar or one-hit wonder situation when we talk about Star Fortress? She's the horse to beat in the Pegasus World Cup filly and mare turf. Bob Baffert threw in his towel of his appeal of Medina Spirit's 2021 Kentucky Derby disqualification. We talked about the fallout and the ramifications which go with that. And our star tomorrow, shed tear not for Bob. He's got yet another one. It is Maymoon, a dominant winner at Santa Anita last weekend. Those 5 topics are now official because Jeff Siegel said so, and I like to tag along and agree with him. So that's the way we play the game here each week on It's Official. We'll do it again next Tuesday, where there will be a heavy dose of recap of what we saw on the track at Gulfstream Park for the Pegasus World Cup. And when we get to next week, man, the Triple Crown Trail batten down the hatches, as they say, because the Southwest Stakes was canceled from this weekend at Oaklawn and moved to next weekend, which now gives us a 4-pronged attack next Saturday on the Triple Crown Trail. We will have major preps all over from Gulfstream to Santa Anita to Aqueduct to Oaklawn next weekend, Jeff. So what a fabulous time in racing these next 2 Saturdays are going to be.
Well, we normally have a section called Triple Crown Tracker here. We bumped that this week because we wanted to concentrate on Saturday's program at Gulfstream Park. But we'll have that back next week. We'll see how many, if any, adjustments Jeremy will have on his rankings, which are almost the gospel as far as I'm concerned. And really, when you think about it, it's a good time of the year, and I'm just hoping for great racing at Gulfstream next Saturday. A lot of times when we run these big days with big stakes, we have nothing but a parade of 3 to 5 and 4 to 5 shots, and it's not a whole lot of fun from gambling. this Saturday, that's not it. But trust me, a lot of great undercard races, good maiden races as well. Excellent gambling. I can't wait for Saturday at Gulfstream Park, even though I will be holding down the fort here at Santa Anita on the simulcast show. But I will have that TV on. I'll be watching both at the same time.
For those of you who love tournament play, it's a great weekend. Get involved. It's the Pegasus World Cup Betting Championship, one of the biggest high roller live money tournaments on the entire annual calendar in horse racing. That's this Saturday from Gulfstream. And the Express Bet Beat the Host, where you got to take down that guy, Jeff Siegel. This week, the 19th annual Beat the Host handicapping contest, the final 5 races on the card at Gulfstream Park, and the first 5 races on the program at Santa Anita. Be sure to download the Express Bet Breeders' Cup Wager Guide Pegasus World Cup Wager Guide, available for downloads beginning on Wednesday morning at first.com/guide. On behalf of everybody with First and the team putting together the Pegasus this weekend, my partner Jeff Siegel, I'm Jeremy Plonk. Have a great week, and we will talk to you on Friday when our First Call podcast will handicap the races this week.